You've been so vocal about these big ethical and cultural issues, and I want to drill down on that a little bit more. But before we do that, I want to talk about something that's been a big topic of conversation in Congress, and that's on the power of artificial intelligence in the context of the military. You wrote in a recent op-ed entitled Our Oppenheimer Moment, and you said that we should be skeptical when the Silicon Valley elites who for years recoiled at the suggestion that software was anything but our salvation now let us know that we must pause vital research that has the potential to revolutionize everything from military operations to medicine. You said this is an arms race of a different kind, and it has already begun. Can you help us understand why and how you think AI is so powerful for the future of warfare, and why we should think about it as an arms race?
Well, I mean, but first of all, again, there's like a business truism where you win where you're superior, and our adversaries are as good or better at hardware than we are. They are not, like, we have no Chinese, Iranian, or Russian competitors. None. I've never even met one.
This fiery debate on AI and warfare is a wake-up call for America. Don't miss this breakdown. So,
that it's like, I think Congress and in general the American people, because there's often a feeling of malaise because somehow our political choices look very crazy, and so if you just look at what's going to happen, first of all, in the enterprise context, commercially, you're going to see a change in GDP vis-a-vis. Now, I think the rough math of GDP was France, had roughly this between 61 and 91, very similar GDP growth to America. It was like 164% there. I think it was like 180 something in America. And then what is the GDP growth going to be in Europe the next 30 years? What is it going to be in America? You can solve a lot of problems with growth where if you you have zero growth or going, you can't solve the problems. And then when we talk about AI, of course, there's large language models. Some of that's very hard to use in the U.S. government. There's algorithms which are already having an enormous impact in ways that people in this room know, but apparently we're not allowed to discuss publicly. And you see on the battlefield, and that's why there's just a very strong demand internationally to buy these products, but also in America.
History has shown that growth solves more problems than stagnation ever could. AI and algorithms are already reshaping industries, from military strategy to enterprise efficiency. The real challenge now isn't innovation, it's whether governments will move fast enough to harness it effectively.
You also have this thing where AI has convinced administrators, CEOs, important people that software-enhanced weapon systems, software in general, actually has to work and can work. And that it's kind of the precursor to using AI is pen testing your enterprise software. In many cases, you get kind of a failing grade, but where you don't get a failing grade, you can accelerate. And there's a general sense, well, we have to do this. The single biggest problem for America is accelerating the implementation of these systems in the U.S. government. And the U.S. government has gone a lot further than other countries in doing this, but it's a very large system. This is a incredible cultural change. It's not like you did your hardware culture moving to software culture that's automatically going to work. And part of the problem you're having in Europe is you have hardware cultures trying to be software cultures, and that's very, very hard to do. So what should the U.S. do? We should implement something where a certain percentage of our software, of our DoD dollars, have to be spent on software that's either been proven on the battlefield or proven in commercially. And if it's been proven in both spheres, you get a bonus. If it's been proven in neither, it's a high hurdle.
And if AI-driven systems have already proven their battlefield and commercial value, why isn't the U.S. government moving faster? Bureaucratic inertia and outdated procurement processes can't be excuses anymore. The future of national security depends on rapid integration, not endless deliberation. Will the next decade be defined by bold action or by missed opportunities?
Simple changes like this, meaning the software actually, like when Ukraine and Israel buy software, what do? They test it. They see if it's working. They want to know, can I write on top of this? What all the various things you would need in enterprise software, they test it. We need a lot more of that, and we need a lot more control of the spend. I think there's a pretty significant movement to do that, which is why the demand to be here has been so great, besides your incredible leadership. And then there's like also giving the U.S. kind of like, the sense of reality, which is, if you took the people you had in this room and you divided it into 10 quadrants, each one of those quadrants would still be better than the tech scene in any other country in the world. Any other country in the world. You have Israel's number 2, it'd still be like, there'd be one of your 10 quadrants. So this is a country that dominates in tech. It's just, again, 86% of the market cap of the top 50 are U.S. companies. It'll probably be 96 at some point. So how do you get enterprises? And, we do see a difference in commercial. We didn't give last quarter's results, obviously, but the quarter before we grew 70%. And we have a nascent and terrible sales force. We still grow at 70%. Imagine what a real sales force could do.
America's dominance in tech is undeniable, but is that dominance translating into real-world implementation at scale? If Palantir can achieve 70% growth with what's being described as a terrible sales force, imagine the potential with a structured, high-performing team. The real challenge isn't innovation, it's ensuring that enterprise adoption keeps pace with technological capability.
With those results. So
why do you think American culture, what is so unique about American culture that has led the United States to be a place that embraces heterodox ideas? And do you see lessons from Silicon Valley tech companies, cultural lessons, for the DoD and government institutions to apply Silicon Valley first principles in order to do a better job at bringing innovation into defense?
Well, first of all, we are a very Calvinist culture. So Calvinism, if you judge with most cultures assume that if you've been successful, you've done something wrong. Calvinism assumes if you did something successfully, you are likely blessed by God. Now, we have a secular derivative of that, but that's certainly the Silicon Valley vibe. Second of all, we really do have to fight to make sure we stay and embrace some version of high transparency, high meritocracy.
What makes American culture such a breeding ground for disruptive innovation? The Calvinist ethos of equating success with virtue creates an environment where bold ideas can flourish. If Silicon Valley's principles of meritocracy and transparency were adopted by government institutions, could we unlock a new era of defense innovation?
There is no other culture in the world, and I spent half my life in other cultures, that is as at ease with let's share information, let's build something. Those things have been talked about a lot. I think one other thing that is talked about less, we are a culture of self-defining culture. So in America, if you want to join a church, synagogue, or mosque, you can decide what that will look like. Doesn't work that way in Europe. You have the state decides for you. So when you want to decide your culture of Palantir or whatever your company is, you can self-define roughly within the context of the law what your culture is. And so we're a believer culture. We actually build things based on belief. And then obviously you actually get to keep, by and large, the proceeds of what you've done. So if you're in China or Russia, you might have done all those things and you still end up in trouble if you speak out. What we can teach the rest of the world, and definitely I think the DoD and others have learned and are embracing by and large, but obviously we should accelerate, is how do you build a culture that is flattened? Is one of the big issues you have in large institutions. You have multiple, you have 1,000 layers of hierarchy.
In countries like China and Russia, innovation is stifled by fear. In America, companies build based on belief, and those who create value actually get to keep it. If the U.S. military wants to stay ahead, it must shed outdated hierarchies and adopt a more decentralized, innovation-friendly culture.
You have this especially in France, where in fact you really need to have small teams of radical transparency where the best idea wins and gets resources, and fighting against larger structures that hide inaccuracies, especially inaccuracies around the assessment of tech, is probably the most important thing an enterprise can do. And it's hard for large organizations to do this. And that is what actually you have to learn. Last not least, kind of slightly self-serving, but, tech is incredible, in American tech is maximally tolerant of any personality if you're delivering. I'm like a hyper, inexplicably dyslexic outsider. Nobody in tech cares. I would defy you to find someone in tech who would not hire me at this point. Now, in the beginning, without Peter, I would not have been hired. But now anybody would hire me, and simply maybe for the wrong reasons. In fact, tech will learn to like. There's a famous story where two people didn't invest in Google, and then they were met each other like, yeah, we got to learn to invest in people we don't like. And this is a really profound story, actually, because American, especially California tech, will learn to embrace things they didn't like before if they deliver. They'll just completely recalibrate. It's like, oh yeah, that was unlikable. That's the feature. We like it. Find more. And that ability to embrace something that you would have rejected and fully embrace it, build a structure around it, hire the person, put them in charge, give them capital. That is a truly unique thing, and it really only exists at scale in this country.
The lesson here is simple. Success isn't about likability, it's about results. Silicon Valley thrives because it values execution over appearances. If institutions like the DoD want to move at the speed of modern warfare, they must abandon outdated gatekeeping and empower the best minds, no matter how unconventional they seem.
I want to end on this topic of culture. When you look at elite university campuses across America and you see unrest and protests and students at these very prestigious institutions openly chanting pro-Hamas slogans, do you worry that
Iranian,
pro-Iranian,
Allah, pro-North Korean? I mean, you got to imagine this. You got people like there's a one clip someone sent me, the person was embracing North Korea. It's like, great. I mean, we really should have a philanthropy to send. We're going to do an exchange program. Exchange programs sponsored by Karp. A little couple months in North Korea and a nice tasting flavored bark. See how you feel about that?
do you worry that our culture is going sideways and in the wrong direction in some way?
Well, obviously that's more than sideways, but I mean, this is like, obviously that we can talk endlessly about what happened there and what went wrong. And it is actually important for people to speak up. And if you want to kind of try to understand what's going on there, and it's very hard. It's actually very hard. And I do think there's a weird way in which if you veer from basic tenets of liberalism too far left, right, or in this case, it's kind of like a Heideggerian form of Marxism, you regress to basically the ideology of our ancestors about 1,000 years ago, which is what I think is actually happening there.
At some point, the line between protest and endorsement of harmful ideologies becomes blurred. The disturbing irony is that in seeking justice, these students are advocating for systems that fundamentally undermine the freedoms they enjoy. We need to call attention to this contradiction and encourage a deeper understanding of the consequences of their actions.
And they don't see the contradiction in their behavior of writing papers about microdiscrimination and then excluding the longest existing minority overtly. They literally don't see the contradiction. I would say we have a problem on our side that we need to speak up. They also believe that everything they're saying is sensible and convincing.
It's clear that when you stray too far from the core principles of liberalism, you end up in dangerous territory. But how did we get to a point where radical ideologies that resemble ancient practices are being embraced as modern solutions? It's critical we understand this shift and push back against it.
Part of their frustration is we're so convincing, but no one's listening. But on our side, we have to explain to them how idiotic and non-convincing and this is, and we need to do it in public. And so, I would say it's game time for if you agree with what I'm saying, it's game time for you, because you can no longer get away with just saying, oh, that looks really, really regressive. But you know what? You actually have to call it out in whatever form you want to call it out, because they actually think what they're saying is sensible. They really believe most intelligent people actually agree with them, and everybody who doesn't agree with them is somehow bought off by some huge machine. And while we may know that's idiotic, very few people are actually saying, hey, this is crazy and we're going to fight against it. And we just have to. The times where you could just not speak out, not say anything, pretend this was some crazy view of somebody, those times are over. If you want this to stop, you have to actually begin to be more vocal. Inside your company, outside your company, and in whatever form you kind of can make yourself feel comfortable with.
This is a pivotal moment. We can't let these regressive ideologies slide by unchallenged any longer. It's our responsibility to confront them directly, speak out, and make it clear that these views are not only misguided, they're dangerous. Silence only allows them to grow stronger.